Okay, this is Extreme Budget. My name is Barry Sines. We are on the path to liberty. I'm pointing out things in our world that point to us to liberty, and I guarantee you're going to find something new on this channel that you've never heard of. I don't know if you've ever heard of these granny pods that people are calling them. Basically, it is a tiny home, but this is the concept. When I'll just read some of this. What do you get when you have an onslaught of aging baby boomers in an affordability crisis and a housing shortage? Granny pods, also known as guest suites, in law suites, or accessory dwelling units. They are they are tiny homes that are either separate or attached to an existing home with shared utilities, and are usually equipped with kitchenette, bathroom, bedroom, living area, basic living things. So these are the positives that they list here. The reason why I want to point this out is because this is not a new concept. It's just basically a guest home. But the reason I like the way they term this, granny pods, is because it's a little more appealing for cities to and city councils to consider allowing people to build these things on their property. If you really haven't noticed, cities are very particular about dwelling places on properties and allowing them with the codes, regulations, and stuff. And we need a way to present it to cities where it'll be a benefit to society, and that the participants in the city, like the city council members, will also benefit from it. And because otherwise you're fighting them, basically saying tiny home, and usually it's a trigger word for them in general cities. When you hear tiny home, then they instantly uh, to, coil up and like get ready to defend themselves, because it's kind of like this stigma against tiny homes. They're freaked out by it sometimes, but there are cities that are starting to loosen up and allow this, such as down here it says local zoning laws. There may be rules against additional dwelling on a property, but given the housing crisis, many municipalities are moving towards more leniency with them, and that is good. I hope that we could all become aware of this and go to our city councils and like present it in this way, granny pods, and these benefits that all people, even the city council members, will benefit from. So it avoids downsides of retirement home. Um, a granny pod can be a lot more affordable than a retirement home, assisted living, or anything like that. If you have had a grandparent or whatever go into an assisted living place, it is extremely expensive, and they figure out ways that you could pay. My grandma, they she was going into that age where she needed to be living with somebody to take care of them. My aunts were doing it, my mom, and uh, they ran into a problem when they were researching it, because when they go to assisted living, then and if you can't pay for it, then they set up a way where they can uh, be paid through your assets, like your home or whatever. And they could, so if you don't have enough money and they drain your bank account, then they look backwards towards whatever assets you have, up to 5 years. So that was mind blowing to me. And luckily, my mom and my aunts decided to put her house in their name. And so they had it in their name for 5 years. And before they put my grandma into assisted living, otherwise, they would have put that on the list for the assets that they could like draw from. So it gets really crazy. And so just think of this tiny home as like assisted living. Like here's another article. Since the age of 20, I've always known that I would be the one to take care of my aunt when she got older. I love her dearly, but my family enjoys our space. It has always been a stressful notion of what we're going to do once it's time to take care of her. With both of us being so independent, sharing our home was never an option, while a nursing home was also does not feel right. I had no idea that a solution was already out there. So, med cottages or granny pods are a great solution for taking care of the elderly family members. So, I'm just pointing out that calling it med cottages or granny pods is a fantastic idea to pass the city council members and the city officials so that they don't freak out when you say, I want to build a tiny home in my backyard. Because I did that actually. I went to my property in Missouri that I bought. And I went down there and I researched, codes and regulations specifically around that area, and they were pretty loose on it. And so when I went down there after I bought my property, I went to the city hall and I asked the lady there. I said, "Here, what are your regulations with tiny homes?" He said, "Well, we don't really have any." And I'm like, "Really?" And like, "What's the minimum, square footage? How many can you build?" And she's like, "Well, you could pretty much do whatever you want. You just have to, come in, get a permit, and uh, um, there's no inspector, but we just approve it and you just do it." And I was like, "Wow, that's amazing." And she said, "Well, you pretty much, just hook up to water." And, that was their only requirement. And I was actually like, uh, I was like surprised by that. I'm like, that is pretty good within city limits. That's pretty good for a city. So that's what I did. And I was there and I was, excited about that. Later, let's see. Um, I went back a few months later, and I presented a shipping container home that looked really nice, or a garage or something. And I think she was at that point, that lady was kind of freaked out by me because I was saying tiny home and shipping container thing, and they don't like that for several reasons. Whatever reason that this city has, and mainly it's like aesthetics. If it looks good or whatever, it looks crappy, or um, as a lot of times they're worried about that. So I think she was a little bit nervous by me. And at that point, she said, "No, we're not allowing any permits anymore for tiny homes." And so they officially made it like, I think it was 800 square feet is the minimum. And you can't do anything smaller, which is, that's okay. I mean, 800 square feet is not really a tiny home, but I was hoping you can do even smaller one, even like a 120 square foot one, because sometimes all you need is a bed and a little, you know, maybe a little shower and toilet, and that's all you really need for somebody passing through that needs to stay somewhere. And it's really cheap to build. So here's another article that says it's a hard decision uh, when it's realized a parent, grandparent, or other aging loved one should no longer live independently and needs a little more care. What should you do? Shopping for and finding the right assisted living facility is timely and complicated, and I would add expensive. They also quite yeah, they say that. So also quite expensive. Many of the high quality communities are very long wait lists have very long uh, wait lists. So uh, yeah, so all the sorts of problems that you can have in trying to take care of your elderly, but there's so many other benefits that you can have from even having this dwelling place. Everybody has like a something need a home. They need a home for some transition in their life, just to get back on their feet, or just guests or in-laws, or except just an additional dwelling unit for all of those purposes. And there's so much benefit from having a transitional, a temporary living space like this. So this brings me to another thing where the one of the biggest problems for people is they could probably afford to build a home, but they can't find property to put it on, affordable property. So this has been the hang up and a huge problem in solving the housing crisis, because even when I'm doing this build a crash course with Marchin, and we're like, hey, we're going to help people, build their home and teach them how to do it. And it's going to be within reach, and people are going to, help them solve their housing crisis. But then I was talking to Marchin one day, and it's like, well, there's also a problem with even finding property, because that's even probably more important, because if you build a home, you know how to build it, but where do you put it? And so then there's all sorts of problems when finding affordable property in the location that you would want to be. And it took me years to research and figure that out. You could find affordable property out in the middle of the desert, but is it going to work for you, like with income and all that stuff? And so that was a major problem. But then I was thinking, well, if you can convince cities like this example is, and loosen it up and say, don't say tiny home, but say granny pod, and that kind of tugs at their heartstrings a little bit, and gives them a reason to have one themselves, then they'll loosen up on it. And then suddenly you have property available everywhere. So if you have parents, or, even a friend or somebody, it's like, heck, I have a home and I have enough space back there for, like, 5 little homes, or, little cabins, or a granny pod like this. And so suddenly it just kind of opens up, like there's property everywhere and everybody could use it. Solves a lot of problems with people who have a transitional time in their life. Otherwise, you're either, if you're a single person, you're more flexible. If you get married, you're still pretty flexible and you could do something. But if you start having kids, you're pretty much locked down. If you have a mortgage, you have to stay at your job and until your kids move out of the house and you become retired. And then now you're downsizing and back into, a house like this where it'd be helpful. So there's multiple reasons to have this as a resource or an opportunity to solve a housing crisis temporarily, because I know so many people who need temporary housing. Even I do. When I go down to Missouri or whatever, I'm helping someone build, I need temporary housing. When I go to school, or when I or am passing through, you need temporary housing. So, and if everybody has a pod like this, they can use it as an Airbnb, and solves problems for not only, the a nursing home taking care of your elderly, but it's also, just a place to vacation in other places. So if I have friends out in other states, they hey, just go stay in a little guest house. So there's so many places, so many in our lives that this would work, and this would solve so many things. Even if cities had some kind of, regulation or whatever, if as long as they loosen up and not freak out about, having small dwelling places. But as long as we're talking about this and in the public awareness, then essentially we'll be demanding this, and we'll become a part of those city councils, and we'll make these decisions. So this is a pretty awesome article. There's Just look up granny pods and you'll find more on it. And I think this will just be kind of a break open of a lot of solutions if we can get more of this implemented in our cities. So there you go. That's a hopeful and helpful article and an idea. So keep going. We're gonna find freedom here. And let me get my face back on here. So we're going to be finding freedom in our lives. There's hope, and keep going. Liberty is ahead.